my family murdered a rapist. This is my grandfather's story. It would have occurred sometime in the early 1960s. My grandpa comes from a very remote part of my country. Even in the 60s, they lived in a log cabin without a phone or electricity. He lived with his 3 brothers, his sister, his father, and his mother. It was a violent household. My great-grandfather was an alcoholic. My grandpa, his siblings, and his mother were accustomed to the beatings. The culture of the time was to accept this as a harsh reality of the remote and difficult lives that were led so far from civilization. My great-aunt was the youngest of the siblings, and as my grandpa and his brothers grew into young men and began working, she was left at home and began to take the role of housekeeper as my great-grandmother was often ill. And she would often use her bad health as an excuse for not stopping what happened next. My great-grandfather began my great-aunt at some point, most likely before she even began puberty. It continued for years, as the brothers all moved out and she was left completely alone. My grandpa says he truly did not know. He was worried for his sister receiving the brunt of the beatings, but he did not know about the I hope that's true. When my great-aunt was 13, she became pregnant with her father's son. The night my grandpa found out, him and his brothers snowmobiled out from town, and since none of them owned a gun, they had to use shovels to beat their father to death. The ground was frozen solid, so they burnt him, which also helped to destroy the evidence, I suppose. Although I'm not sure anyone ever questioned how my great-grandfather had died, these were very different times. My great-aunt's son, born of incest, is afflicted with genetic issues. He can barely see, and he has only a single functioning kidney. But he is happy and has healthy kids in their 20s now. My great-aunt drank herself to death in the 80s, as did my great-grandmother, so I never met them. My grandpa told me all this while he was drunk, as he's also become an alcoholic. So has my dad. The generational trauma of my family is thankfully now broken with me and my siblings. But this revenge murder? This disgusting hurt was really just another sad piece of a puzzle of abuse that started a long time ago. Wow, starting off with a super dark one today. It's a very sad story, but your great-grandfather definitely got what he deserved. I, 15M, indirectly caused the death of my abusive ex-stepdad. When I was 9, my mum met a man who, for the sake of the story, we'll call Jay. Jay was an unremarkable man. He was a chef, and he was from New York, living in South Philadelphia at the time. My mum, being emotionally unstable, decided to give him a try after lots of past relationships not working out. Seriously, she has a bad taste in men. And I feel like it's a good time to mention my dad is dead from a drug overdose. So my mum was desperate for someone to be that guy who was good for her and me. She gives Jay a chance, and out of nowhere, boom, Jay has cancer. It came out of the blue, and my mum's heartstrings were pulled by him, and she was attached to him for good. I was 9 at the time, so of course I was a stupid kid who never thought my mum could be wrong. Well, I didn't notice her getting black eyes, but my grandfather did. So one day at a corner store in my neighbourhood, he decided to beat Jay black and blue. He was stuck on the couch for days, and looking back, it brings a smile to my face. But he convinced my mum that my grandmother, who was manipulative, manipulated my grandfather to beat him up, so we have to move. After an intervention was held, my mum had decided to move. We packed our things in a van, and I held my 90-pound Rottweiler on my lap, and we moved to Florida. I'm gonna admit, life sucked here. For 5 years, I was stuck in such a dumpster fire of a state with no family support. My mum was abused daily, and I was mostly mentally abused. I also lost my great-grandmother at this time, and I wanted to go back to Philly for the funeral, but Jay said no. Eventually, in 2021, my mum left Jay, and then the worst night of my life happened. This was Halloween. I was still in Florida, and I went trick-or-treating with a younger friend. At this point in time, my mum was paying for Jay's new apartment because she just wanted him gone. Well, he broke into our apartment, took my puppy for a walk, and smashed everything. My mum decided instead of calling the police, she would confront him with me alone. So we went, and as a precaution, my mum had a knife on her. So we went, and when we got there, Jay was with a girl. I called 911 and a fight ensued. I beat the everlasting shit out of Jay. Unfortunately, my mum was so angry at Jay that she stabbed him. It was non-lethal, his fat got it so he didn't go to the hospital. When the police showed up, they gave a good look at my mum and the situation and arrested her for assault and breaking and entering. Well, the trial came and went. My mother is off the hook, but she will be a felon until a completion of a program. So we left him in Florida and decided to move back north to New Jersey. I know my mum breaking up with Jay was account to me because I pushed hard for it. Life continues. But November comes around and I received news that made me burst out in laughter. Jay's sister came forward and told us he shot himself in the head. I even read his suicide note. I ruined his relationship with my mum and karma came back. Life goes on and he dies unloved and alone. I'd be interested to know what was on the note. The guy must have been seriously unstable if his partner/victim leaving him made him shoot himself. Death was probably a mercy. OP also confirmed in the comments that he lied about having cancer. When will it be now leaves a good response to this in the comments. Sounds like this was one last manipulative way to hurt you and your mum. I hope you don't feel guilt because this is not on your shoulders or your mum's. I hope you're both in a happier and healing place now. You let him rape us? I set you up. OP opens with a paragraph just stressing that it isn't fake. It's a brutal story, but nobody wishes it was fake more than them. First, our father passed away 4 years before all this started. It was a car crash. Maybe our lives would have been better if he hadn't died that day. Also, before I get into this, one thing you should know is before this man came into our lives, our mother was amazing. She was loving, supportive, and put us above everything. But she would soon replace us with her new man and her new habits. When I was around 9 and my little sister 7, our mum started dating this man. Let's call him POS. That obviously means piece of shit, but I can't be asked to keep spelling it, so I'm gonna call him James. James was tall and weighed about 250 pounds. He had oily brown hair and a face filled with sores. I didn't like him from the start. He made me uncomfortable, to say the least. A few months after they started dating, James moved into our house. Everything was okay for the first few weeks, I guess. Then, Mum started to act funny. Staying up all night, not cooking us lunch or supper, not cleaning, snapping at us for no reason, and she started hitting us. Our lives had been turned upside down by this man so quickly. Okay, I'm really sorry to do this, but the next section describes to 2 very young girls in such detail that I absolutely cannot repeat it here. For a quick summary, one night, James decided to go into OP's bedroom and OP while the mum watched, which she obviously enjoyed as they went into the living room to celebrate after. Then a few nights later did the same to OP's little sister. If you're really interested, I'll leave a link to the full story in the comments. Oh, it was also OP's 10th birthday, which makes it that much more disturbing. Okay, back to the post. The rape and abuse went on for 3 years. I didn't know at the beginning, but I found out soon, James had gotten my mum into using meth. James and meth were the only important things in her life. My sister and I were nothing more than his play toys. I soon started noticing them arguing more and more. About who got more hits, this one was stashing from the other one, and you started smoking the last of it all by yourself. This is when I started planning my revenge. I noticed after about 3 days they would finally pass out, and sleep for almost 2, and their bag of meth would always be on the bedside table beside James. I know most of you would ask, why didn't you call the police or child welfare? Because jail wasn't enough. He might have abused us, but she betrayed us. She turned her back on us. And I wanted revenge, and wanted her to suffer like we had. So every chance I got, I would move the bag, just at first. Make it look tampered with. Then I started taking it from the bag and placing some on my mum's table. These things alone caused a lot of fighting. They started getting physical. I would keep my sister and I out of sight when this went on, and they never lasted long. Well, I continued to do this over a couple of months, taking more and more, flushing it or dropping it down the sink. Until the last day. The last day I took the whole bag. It was a good amount. They had just re-upped, as they would say. I flushed the whole bag, locked my sister and I in my room, and quietly prayed that they didn't realise it was me. I'm not sure how long after I did this that everything started, but we'd watched like 3 Disney movies before they finally woke up. That was when I heard him start yelling about his missing bag. The yelling got louder and more intense. Then I heard the breaking of objects. It was starting to get bad now. I heard my mum go from angry to scared. I hear him hitting her begging him to stop and swearing she didn't touch it. He continued to hit her and she continued to beg, begging him to stop hurting her, begging someone to come help her. Begging like we begged her for so many nights. My sister started asking to leave. She was scared and crying. I opened my window, put my sister outside and followed. We ran to the neighbours and told them that James was beating our mum. The neighbour called the police and brought us inside. We watched as the police pulled up to our house. They started walking up to the door, stopped for a second, and then started yelling, "Police," and kicked the door in. After what felt like forever, we see James being brought out to the police car. I wait to see my mum follow, but she doesn't. Then I see an ambulance pull up and the paramedics run in with a gurney. A short time later, I see them rushing back with my mum. I catch a glimpse of her once beautiful face, now looking like ground meat. Her face was solid red, covered in blood. She ended up dying on the way to the hospital. I never planned to have my mother killed. I just wanted her to feel the pain that we'd been feeling for these last years. And I guess, in the end, she did. She felt the pain and terror we felt every night for the last 3 years. She just felt it all in one night. Do I feel bad about what I did? No, I don't. If I didn't do what I did, we would have been stuck there, being and beaten every day until one of us would have died. James was convicted of second-degree murder, possession of drug paraphernalia, I flushed the actual drugs, child pornography, pictures of us, and 23 counts of aggravated rape and 17 counts of aggravated rape against a person under 12 years of age. That last one is a death sentence. We moved a few states over to be with our dad's parents. We hadn't seen them in almost 4 years, and for the first time in a long time, we actually felt safe. My sister, still to this day, doesn't know what I did. Doesn't know that I played a big part in our mum's death. And since we never talk about either of them, it never comes up. We are both happily married now. I have 3 children, she has 2. And both of us are active members of our PTA. No one looking at us today would ever guess the hell we went through, or what I did to get us out of it. That was such a sad story, and I'm so sorry that happened. Death was the only justice for those 2. I'm so happy you've both moved past this and have decent lives. The comments are just filled with people listing their own creative torture for James. If you can think of a better punishment for James, please let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for listening. I can't believe you've made it this far. I hope you've managed to glean some kind of enjoyment out of all of this brutal revenge. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.